You're doing
Anyway, we're
fantastic
going
job.
to jump now to Sven in Seattle, who is also
Sven.
a theist. Can you hear us, Sven?
Score. What's up, Sven?
Hello, I can. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
No.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the line. No,
Oh,
Paul is a jerk. Ignore him. Just ignore him.
Hi, Sven. Welcome to the line.
So
What did you want to talk to us about?
Thank you. Yeah, so I did call last time that you co-hosted, and it was right at the end when Shannon dropped, so I'm glad you're here this time, Shannon.
Yeah, although we'll see what happens. Maybe you're bad luck, Sven. But I got booted off my own show.
Oh, no.
But you'll get a much better answer with Shannon here, that's for sure.
Oh, was Sven the one who called to talk about the soul?
So, yeah, so I just, as a person who is pretty high on the empathic level, I do spend every day thinking about, how people are trying to do good and moral relativism and all that. And I just would wonder from a psychology perspective, what really would be your advice to someone who wouldn't see the purpose of living life and going through this anxiety and stress if there's no soul or better purpose that we're fighting for? And that's like literally our daily struggle.
So I just want to make sure that I'm deconstructing the question correctly. So I'm going to repeat it back to you in my words. Let me know if I've got it. So what would be my advice for somebody who is very empathic, invested in caring about the things that happen to others? And if there is no soul or, air quotes, ultimate meaning and purpose, what would my advice be to somebody who has that sort of inclination regarding how to feel about those being facts or the case? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, you could say that.
Okay. So I suppose my advice would be that if you are empathic, and I don't mean empathic, like, you can really sense other people's emotions in the not Deanna Troy empath. Yes, exactly. It's my Enterprise. Wrong Enterprise for her, but anyway. Yeah.
In the scientific way. No reading minds.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. In the actual way of, being high on the scale of being empathetic. Then I think that it ultimately is indistinguishable if there is or isn't a soul, because I don't think that there is one. And I'm pretty heavily empathic myself. I'm a very empathetic person and invested in and care a great deal about the impact that the things that I do have on other people. Now, even if I do not have a soul and there is no, air quotes, ultimate meaning and purpose, there is inarguably still other people. And if my locus of concern is the effect that my actions have on them and the benefit that I garner from interacting with them, that is static. It does not change whether I do or do not have a soul. The impact that I have does not change. The impact that they have on me does not change. The only difference is what my perception of whether or not it is or isn't important, that there be some sort of existential, continuously existing external component of me. And I don't see that as being necessary for me to feel emotions and be affected by my actions or have my actions affect the emotions and mental outcomes of others.
Right, I see that, and I guess more of my point is where, like, as an empath, I want to understand people and their feelings, and I like to feel their emotions, and if there's no objective morality, and to me that would lend towards, who am I really to not feel agree.
What are you motivated by?
Someone like Hitler who just wanted to.
What are you motivated by, Sven?
The objective morality good.
So if there is no objective morality, do your motivations change? So if you find out right now, if you have an epiphany on this conversation with me, that, there is no external attainable standard that we call morality, that has an absolute component to it that we can achieve. If you find that out right now and have this epiphany while we're on the call, what changes for you about how you conduct yourself and perceive your relationships with other people as a result?
Well, personally, this is why I'm very strong in my foundation. That wouldn't change because for me, I wouldn't see any purpose to, like I said, living this life or going through the anxiety or the stress of trying to help people when it seems like if there's no objective morality, it seems like there's no good fight to be really had. And I think you see this more and more with the intellectual right, Jordan Peterson and other people I've heard on Joe Rogan who, like, they don't defend Hitler, but they say, like, from a naturalist evolutionary standpoint, he was just doing what was good for his people.
I think that's an oversimplification.
Subconsciously. What's that?
I think that's an oversimplification and a dangerous one. So if what you're saying is if there is no objective morality, then there's no point in me behaving in any sort of what I would perceive as personally my internal existing moral standard, because you obviously have some sort of internal existing moral standard irrespective of whether or not there is an external objective absolute morality or it's a subjective standard based on actions, interactions, and effect. Now, if you're saying that if there is no objective morality that we can appeal to, then people will just descend into chaos, and thus we need to continue to retain that belief, I would disagree with you. And one of the reasons that I would disagree with you is that if you're motivated by the purpose of retaining well-being and preventing harm, and you've already articulated that you're empathic. If you're empathic, and that's a natural and innate component of you, that empathy shouldn't be, and couldn't be, if you're being honest about it, relative to any sort of external existent absolute morality. It's a component of you. So I don't think that external morality that is absolute exists in any sort of tangible way. But I do understand the concept of consequences and am emotionally invested in the outcomes of other people. So instead of me attempting to achieve an unattainable standard, I can now have valuable conversations about why I have the standards I have, potentially compel other people to have the standards that I have using rational thought, as opposed to appealing to something unattainable, which I think is less valuable, and not even unattainable, also unknowable. You really can't know. If there is an objective, absolute moral standard, it's indistinguishable from subjective moral standards, because we have absolutely, utterly, and completely no way of knowing when we have achieved it, if we have achieved it, what it even is. We don't have access to it. It's a concept.
So Sven, are you a Christian?
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
So would you agree that,
no,
like...
I was raised Christian. I'm now a dodecatheist. I follow the Greek pantheon.
Okay.
Oh.
Would you agree largely that that the objective morality, should it exist, would at least contain contain as a major tenet, love your neighbor as yourself, or do unto others as they would have done to them? Would you agree that that is a large component of what you consider objective morality to be?
Oh yes, the golden rule is found in most religions around the world somewhere. Right.
So that's why your question seems so confusing to me, because your question seemed to be, how can an empath or someone who's empathetic, deal with life if there isn't this objective morality? But it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the more empathy a person has, the less they actually need that rule as a rule that they're thinking about, right? Because the more empathetic you are, the closer your behavior is going to align to that ideal. Would that not be correct?
Right, until the point where, like what I was trying to say earlier, where it gets dangerous, to the point where if I'm truly led to believe that there's no, that humanitarianism or well-being isn't the objective morality of the consciousness, then I would also have to feel empathy for Hitler and his fear of his race being killed, so the only way for him to defend his race was to wipe out all the other races.
So you think empathy is haphazard? So you think that empathy is haphazard and would be universally applied without any discrimination to any person throughout time, indiscriminately, and people who have empathetic components to them or are heavily empathetic wouldn't be able to do the logical and rational discernment of assessing whether or not that empathy was accurately placed. Because I suppose I could make an argument utilizing your perspective that you should sort of universally apply, and likely would universally apply, empathy as a standard in the way of empathy as equating attempting to understand somebody's perspective. But that doesn't mean that you have to sympathize with or endorse their perspective. There's benefits to being empathetic from a utilitarian perspective, because you're attempting to achieve an understanding of why somebody has that perspective. Achieving an understanding of why somebody has that perspective does have utilitarian value, because if you recognize other people having those perspectives, then you can utilize the information that was gathered from your empathetic endeavor in order to potentially intervene and prevent other people from making more dangerous decisions using rational thought. So saying I would have to have empathy for Hitler, I can understand why that would sound outwardly very, very dangerous, because this is somebody that is deserving of ultimate disdain, and is an example that people bring up because you have a visceral reaction, because you know how many atrocities this man committed, and that he's not deserving of our respect, and he's not deserving of our sympathy. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't be subject to our attempts at understanding, which is what empathy is. And our attempts at understanding may be very well what prevents people like him in the future from engaging in the same types of behavior, or also increases our ability to recognize those behaviors so that we can quell them.
Right, like being empathetic to a serial killer would mean that we feel for the environmental factors that led up to their decisions or even non-decisions about, the actions they took. That wouldn't mean endorse. That doesn't mean you endorse what they do, because obviously you're feeling empathetic for their victims as well. So by your principle, you're feeling equal empathy for all of them. I think what you want to do. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do think that would be more sympathetic, where we feel for them and we feel sad for their pain that led them there. But empathetic would be like where we literally feel how they're feeling and why the fear that they feel this is the only way they can survive, and to have an understanding of why they have to do that to survive.
Sure, but
now you're falling back on rational justifications.
Yeah.
It's just that part threw me off, sympathetic. But I do know you guys are busy, and hopefully I can call in the future. I really appreciate you guys. I'm going to go back and listen to this. It has been fruitful.
Yeah, I appreciate you calling, and I'm sorry that apparently the last time you called, I decided I wasn't going to be on the show anymore. Rage quit my own show sometime.
Yeah,
thanks, Sven. It was really nice talking to you.
Have a wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah, you too.
Shoot, sorry. Dropped him a little bit too soon.
Hang up on Sven. I put you in charge, and look what happens.
Hey, thanks for checking out this clip for The Line. While you're here, hit that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and then share this with that bitter uncle of yours who loves talking about the good old days.